Welcome, everybody. It's Janie here from Sage and Seer Emporium. It is Friday, the 19th of May, and I have just the most lovely lady with me today, Shirley Keagan, who is a reflexology practitioner, a life coach. She also works with bioenergy, and she's got a few other feathers to her bow as well. She's down in Cork, and we've been chatting to each other via Instagram for quite a few years now, and have struck a really lovely friendship with each other. And when I asked her to come on to the show, she accepted. So I'm so grateful. I'm so happy to have you here, Shirley. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better. So I'm really curious as to how you got into the healing game, because we've all got a story. So please, yeah, I'd love to hear how you got into doing the healing work, and yeah, it'd be great to hear from you.
Lovely. Thank you, Janie. I'm absolutely honored to be here. And I just want to say, when I came across you on Instagram, I connected immediately to your energy. So I consider this a complete privilege.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Oh, thank
So
you.
my official journey into this world kind of started in 2011. So I was working in the corporate world. I was in it maybe
Oh,
22, yeah, maybe 22 years at that stage. Like started as an operator, worked my way up, did my third level college by night, was very passionate. I had a young daughter at the time, and my goal was to give her a really good life. So I worked really hard. I was very career focused. And then 2011 came, and I suffered like what I would call severe burnout.
mm,
To me, it felt like a breakdown because I couldn't cope. It wasn't that I was just tired and needed sleep. It was like I had lost all my mental resilience. I couldn't cope. I actually couldn't cope with the most basic of
mm,
tasks. Um, and that unpeeling, that sitting still and being very uncomfortable in my vulnerability. So this was the first time in my life that I found myself unable to cope and not knowing what to do next, not knowing clearly what the next move was.
mm.
And when I sat in that, trying to navigate my way out of it, I suppose it brought me back to the real reason that I got into this work. And it brought me back to my teens, 15, kind of maybe 14 really, but 15 was the defining age when I'd had my beautiful daughter. So
Okay, okay. What age was
yeah,
she, Shirley, when in 2011 when you kind of got burnout?
she was 29. So she was
Okay,
reared. She was done. She
yeah.
actually just had her first daughter. And that's one of the reasons I knew I was really unwell because, like my daughter has always been my passion. Like family would be my top core value,
Mm.
like family, family, family. And I remember her bringing her little infant child up to see me when I was unwell, and I actually felt no joy. I actually,
Oh,
it was like I was blunted to everything. I
oh
didn't mind
dear.
that they were there, but I didn't care if they didn't call. I didn't care if nobody spoke nicely to me. I didn't care if the world went by and stopped. So I knew that there was something really,
Mm.
really,
Yeah,
off
fundamentally
kilter.
wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it gave me the opportunity to look into what that was. So I suppose like it was good old Catholic Ireland. I don't know how much you are aware of how we're steeped in shame in this country, and
Mm,
women were like really oppressed, and
mm.
sexuality was very oppressive, and there was no openness about anything like that. It was this big sin, it was a dirty sin, and I had
Mm.
committed the dirty sin. But the unfortunate thing for me was that I had the evidence.
Mm. Oh
So,
wow. Oh my God.
yeah,
Do you mind if I ask what year that was, Shirley?
1982.
Oh, so it's not even that long ago, really. It's
No,
not.
no,
And
it's not.
it was still like that in the 80s.
Yes, not only was it like that, but so when I found out I was pregnant, and because I was under the age of consent, the doctor had a legal duty to tell my father, which kind of
Okay.
suited me, to be honest. And he was a lovely doctor. And he told my dad. And then my dad told me he knew. And just to give him the chance that he'd get some stuff prepared, and then he'd tell my mother. So this is all going on in the background. I come home from school one day. My poor mother is upstairs sitting on their bed, and she calls me up and she's crying. And she has all these little sheets on the bed. And she just said, I know you're pregnant. And you know we have to send you away. And I just said, I know. Like I didn't even know. Like I honestly didn't know what was going to happen. I suppose I never thought, like I was 15.
Of,
I didn't have the comprehension. Like obviously I knew I had had sex, but I had no comprehension of
mm,
the, seriousness of that or the outcome. Like it was a discovery, almost like putting a butterfly in a jar. Do you know what I mean? It was one of these things that just
of
happened. And
course, of
you know what I
course,
mean?
of
It
course.
wasn't like,
Teenagers
oh,
don't have, you don't have the
no,
cognitive,
no,
ability to think of if I do
yeah,
this, this is going to
yeah.
happen.
And do you know what I'm going to say now, even after that
Oh,
emotional episode? I loved sex and I still love sex.
good.
So, so for anyone out there wondering, oh my God, was that awful traumatic? And how could you do something like that? Well, I did it because it felt natural and it actually, between all the fuddling around and as it is at the start of anything, a bit awkward. But like to me, that intimacy is still always beautiful. But anyway,
Oh, thank you for
so
sharing. And I just want to acknowledge your, emotion there because obviously I'm from New Zealand, not raised in Ireland, and my childhood is so far removed from what was going on in Ireland, because it just wasn't like that in New Zealand at all. And I didn't realize the full extent of it, Shirley, until I moved
yeah,
here. And I said to somebody, oh, what are some movies that I could watch to get an understanding of the psyche, of the culture, of the history, this kind of thing. And somebody recommended I watched the Magdalene Laundries. And
yeah.
oh my God, that film broke me in half. It was so traumatizing and
Mm.
it made me feel like I had been here in another life and that I had been in one of those laundries and that I had, gone through that stuff. It was that deep when I watched it. So is that what you were talking about with your
Yeah,
experience? You
so
ended up going because you said you had
yeah,
to go away.
but thankfully, I suppose by the 80s, it wasn't a laundry I went to. I
Okay.
don't know if the laundries were still going on in the 80s. So the work we did was, so if ever you'll think me now the next time you do this, when you go in to buy a birthday card or an anniversary card, and you know the card and the envelope are in a
Mm.
plastic sleeve,
Yes.
that's what we did.
Oh, that was your job when you were
Yeah, yeah,
so rewind slightly because I think it's important to help people understand the process of what happened. So you
yeah.
found
So
out you were pregnant. Your mum and dad got told by the doctor. This is
yeah,
1982, and they was it the
I
priest's decision that you had to get
yeah.
sent
So
away? Why
I
couldn't you
don't I don't
stay?
know how honestly don't know how that discussion went on.
Hmm.
Like my parents have a different um my parents' way of dealing with this is a little different as the years have gone on.
Hmm.
So the discussion around it is actually still very delicate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, God bless
Um
them. Oh.
my mother would say, well, you were only up there so that you could continue your education. So yeah, they don't understand the depth, or maybe they can't
Hmm.
accept that for them. So
Mm.
I have no idea what discussion happened. All I know is I was told in midterm during that week to bring all my books home from school. So to not leave anything in my desk for midterm. And then midterm in February 1982, a priest drove us to Dunboyne in County Meath. So it was
Oh
almost
my
like,
God. I'm
yeah,
just thinking of myself at 15, like I was such a rebel. Oh
yeah.
my goodness. And I guess you probably were a little bit as well.
That's the irony. No, I was actually really quiet. Like I'd never spoken back to my parents. I was never disobedient. It's like,
Oh.
yeah, yeah.
So
So
it
like
was quite a shock then actually to your
yes,
family. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So like and like that I did what I was told. Like it never dawned on me to say, why can't I stay at home? Why do I have to go away? Like that
Mm,
never I just was, I had done something wrong and this was what followed that sequence. Now the priest was lovely. I mean, like it's so ironic. Like there was no motorways back then. So you went through every town and village. So like it was maybe a 4 or 5 hour drive. We had a friggin' picnic on the way up. Like we got out of the car halfway, sat at the side of the road on a blanket and ate sandwiches and tea from a flask.
oh my
Like
God.
it's just it's the most incredible thing to even just think about. So when we got up there then and like I mean I will never, it's like as if it's been seared into my head, that building. It was so tall and grey. And we went in the front door, my parents were so awkward. Like I was a bit, I suppose age gives you a little bit of that, that you're just going through the motions. You're not necessarily even
Mm,
analyzing anything. So
mm,
it wasn't really until it was time to go.
mm.
And when they went to go, that I suppose the realization then, and it was a gravel drive, like it's a 4-star hotel now, Dunboyne Castle. Maybe they don't have the gravel drive, but the drive is still the same, I'm sure.
Yeah, of course.
Um, and just hearing the tires crunching, like I went to run. I mean, I was never going to run after the car, but it was just that instinctual thing. But I'll tell you, I had a hand put on me and pulled back fairly rapid. Now they weren't cruel to us up there, but it was institutionalized.
Yes,
And
yeah.
like we were locked in at
Mm.
night time, you were locked into your room.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
yeah, yeah, like you weren't going to run away or into your dorm or, the corridors would be locked. Like you
Say if
didn't
you
have
take
to,
off again and repeat the cardinal sin, like, oh my goodness, it's madness, isn't it? And this is like the 80s.
that was the 80s and that home stayed open until the mid 90s.
Wow.
They only lost the demand for that in the mid 90s. There was still girls being hidden. Now,
So
like,
when you, oh, sorry.
yeah, no, because I was going to say, like, I'm eternally grateful because like I did get the opportunity to keep my daughter.
Yes,
So
right. Yeah,
my
yeah, that's,
story doesn't have that sad outcome.
mm,
So like, at one level my parents were correct. They weren't hiding me because they were ashamed. They were probably hiding me to protect me, but they gave me the option to keep my daughter,
oh,
which like
wow.
was not
Yeah, yeah.
not the done thing. So, like yeah, I was one of the lucky ones.
Absolutely. Oh, thank goodness for that. My goodness, I know there's a whole massive piece around that trauma in Ireland that's still very, very, front and center in this day and age. And I've had to deal with it, and help clients, probably most
Mm,
likely like yourself as well, where they've either been the child that's been adopted or they've been the person that's had the child taken off them or everything in between. So your mum and dad had the foresight really to kind of, I guess, yeah, not
yeah.
cause even more trauma.
Yeah, now it wasn't the most simplest. So she was taken at 6 days and she was going for adoption.
Mm.
Um, and I came home, I went back to school, and then I literally came home one day having my lunch. My mother was at the kitchen sink, and I just said, I'm going to see her one more time because I was due to sign the papers to release her to her adoptive parents. She was in foster care. And I started crying and I just said out loud, I don't think I can live without her. I want her so much. And my
Mm.
mother looked around and she said to me, what did you say? And I repeated, and my mother walked towards me. She said, you can bring her home. And I was like,
Oh,
what?
wow.
What? And my parents did say that to me among the 6 months that I was up there.
Mm.
But I suppose it got buried somewhere among the sermons from the nuns. Every day we heard it. A baby deserves a loving home. A baby deserves two parents. You have no right to keep these babies. These babies deserve
Oh
more than
my
what you can give
goodness.
them. And you have to make your mind up while you're in your right stage of mind. Because, of course, when you have your baby, you're going to want to keep it. And that's a really selfish thing. And it went on and on and on for 6 months. And somewhere in that, I did not hear that voice from my parents. I did not have that coming in. Like I saw my mother twice in the 6 months, and I saw my father 5 times. And the only reason I
Oh
saw
my
my father three
goodness.
extra times is because he was on a course in Dublin. And when he was up on the course, he came out to see me. So, and it's not like mobile phone days. You
No.
had a phone under the stairs. They might ring you once a week to see how you're doing. Like this was isolation and institutionalized. Yeah. And I would say, like, I really have to just hold my hat up to my parents because, and you've got children. Could you imagine if you had a child that you knew what the right decision was for them, but you had to allow them to come to it? If I'd never said those words, Janie, if I had
Yeah.
never said those words because I didn't believe I had the right to keep her, I felt I
Mm.
had to sacrifice what I believed to be my joy for her better. And then my mother
Yeah.
said this, and I was like, what? I said, yeah, we told you that. Well, I can tell you, when that crack came in the door, there was nothing, nothing. That happened on a Tuesday. And I was like, when can we go up? Ring daddy, see when we can go up to collect her. And of course, my father, being the most logic, he said, you're not to say anything to anybody. We'll have a chat when I come home from work. And my father set me down and he said, look, I know this feels absolutely amazing, but you're a young girl. We live in a small town. And he said, this is not going to be the end of your problems. It will be just the beginning. I was like, I know, I know, I know. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No matter what he said. If
Yeah.
he had said to me I had to walk on broken glass, I'd have said, put it down for a mile. I didn't care. The door had opened and my foot was in
Oh.
it and nothing, nothing.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't care. I
Yeah.
didn't care what I was having to do. I was bringing my daughter home and I do the best I could to give her a good life. And that was it. So we went up on the Friday. Um, and this was the real interesting thing. So I suppose like as that young child, you don't have those discussions with the nuns. You arrive at their convent, you follow the rules. So it was Besborough Convent in Cork then that were, obviously assigning them to whatever families. So I thought we were going up on the Friday to collect her.
Mm.
So when we got up, I realized this is another interview. This is like, so there was two nuns in the formal, garb, and I'm at the other side with my mother and father. And this is the irony. This is probably the first time I would say my parents saw that fight in me
Yeah.
because my father was a military man, now a really good dad, but you wouldn't ever back cheek him. And it wasn't that he ever slapped us, but it was almost like you just didn't go there, even though I wasn't like
Wow.
physically afraid of him. But that, yes, sir, had been kind of bred in really early. And as the conversation was going on and they were asking me questions, I just got this realization my baby isn't here. They're not
Mm.
going to give me my baby back. And I just said, where's my baby? Whatever question they asked, I just didn't answer. And they said, well, we didn't have enough notice now to give to the foster mother. And I actually stood up and I said, get my baby. Get my
Mm.
baby now. I am not leaving here. Like I was still like leaking milk.
Yeah, of
And I just
course.
said, get my baby. And I always remember my father like just putting his hand on me and he said, sit down, Shirley, and calm down. I looked at him and I said, I will not calm down. get my baby now. I think I actually may have even pounded the desk.
Yeah.
Like nothing. I was not leaving. Anyway, I had to, but that with the promise that when we came back up at 11 o'clock Saturday morning, she would be there. And she was. I still have the letter, Janie, that the
Oh
social,
my goodness. I am like covered in
yeah.
goosebumps, Shirley.
And
Your
like it's
spirit
funny.
just shines through.
Yeah, even though, like I've processed this and I've processed it 1,000 times over, like I suppose what makes me emotional, it's not even like the sadness, it's just the powerful emotions of the memories, like seeing
Mm.
her coming in, like when she was taken off me in Hollis Street, like I had nobody with me.
Oh
Like I got
God.
her dressed and a social worker came and took her. And I watched her walk down the corridor of Hollis Street with my baby. Like it's just, and
God.
then 3 weeks later, so she was born on the 12th of August, and I got her back on the 11th of September. And like she came in, she jet black hair actually when she was born, it turned blonde then. And like the foster mother had her dressed beautifully. She had a beautiful little pink dress on her, and she was just gorgeous. She had given her a little red doll to take when she'd most. It was Mammy went out to meet her. Now I didn't meet this lady, and a beautiful letter. But I must tell you this, so the letter was all about, she's a very happy baby. She feeds at this time. She loves baby talk. Make sure you wind her. I suppose this poor woman was thinking she's going to this 15-year-old who hasn't a hope of taking care of her. I need to just write everything down.
Yeah.
Um, and when you go to bed, have her bottles ready. She's a hungry baby. She'll wake every night, at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So we left anyway. We got her christened up there in the chapel. And we left that day and came home. And she slept through the night. And I'll always remember my
Oh
mother
my goodness.
saying the next day, she knows she's home. And
Yeah,
I
back
just thought
to
that
back.
was just so lovely. Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
yeah.
Shirley, thank you
Mm.
so much for sharing that. It's just, I mean, there's a book in that, isn't there? That whole experience is
I,
like,
I don't know. I don't know. Do the Irish need another book on misery?
oh yeah. But it's not. It's a really joyful story. You're one of the lucky ones who actually managed to get your baby back, and you weren't kind of tortured or abused in the place that you
Yes.
went to stay in when you were pregnant. And for many, many women in this country, that was their path. They just got raped, tortured, abused, killed, even some of them. So
Yeah.
it is a happy story. It is such a happy story. And I bet your daughter is just the most beautiful soul.
She is, and like we have a great relationship. Like we are very close, even though it was the traditional teenage thing. She hated me when she was a teenager, and she was wild, wild.
You're doing your
Um,
job then, apparently. My friend
and that's
tells
what
me
I
if
used
your
to say.
teenagers hate you, you're doing you're a good mum.
That's exactly what I used to say. But now, like, I mean, we talk. She only lives a mile from me, but we talk every day, and yeah, we're very close. But I suppose, it's kind of full circle to that's what probably really led to the burnout because at 15, not that I took on this, like it never felt like a big task to take on. It never felt like a burden. Like I felt so privileged to be lucky
Mm,
enough to get to rear my daughter
yes,
that I was so determined she was going to have a good life. We were going to have a good life.
yeah,
I was not going to be one of the statistics. My daughter would not fall through the cracks because I was the 15-year-old mother. So, like, it put that drive in me, which was really good. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I just forgot to put brakes in the mechanism when I did it.
yeah. Well, my curiosity is getting the better of me. What happened to her dad in all this story? Was he punished or sent off to a clinic or
No,
a,
no.
infirmary or
And the ironic thing is, so there was a 3-year gap. Like a lot could have happened to him because he
mm,
was
yeah. Oh, he was
18.
18. Mm,
Yes, yeah,
yeah.
3.5-year gap. But no. So he did what a lot of men do. He took to the hills, continued having a great life and plowing his seed. and intermittently came back thinking that he wanted to be, you know, a good parent. It never lasted.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so that relationship just completely fizzled out, and he went on his merry way without any emotional, financial, or any obligation to her.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, well. Oh,
yeah.
well.
He's lost, Janie. He's
Yeah,
lost.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, Shirley. So, your daughter arrived, you were, one of the lucky ladies who managed to get her back. And I take it your life then was spent, you stayed with your mum and dad and reared your daughter and went on to carve out this amazing life in the corporate world. And it got to a point then when you said, it just got overwhelming. You couldn't think straight. Your
Yeah.
probably any energy levels were probably flattened, and so you had to just finish work. Was it, Shirley?
Yeah, so and it wasn't just, I suppose, that instant in isolation, but it lined me up to become this, you know, doer and this giver and this be there for everybody. And
Hmm.
that became exhausting. So like even in the corporate world, I'd be the go-to person, you know, if somebody needed something solved, I was kind of the go-to person in the family. Like I was the
Hmm.
problem solver. And I suppose I lost the passion for work. And then when it all came tumbling down, it's not as much that it was because of what happened to me when I was younger. It was because I didn't really allow myself any softness about it.
Hmm.
I didn't
Okay.
I didn't know how to acknowledge that vulnerability. I didn't know how to feel vulnerable because my life became that um it was like I had parked it up
Hmm.
and just get on with living. And
Yeah.
you see, you know, you can't really park something like that up when you live in a society that wants to keep letting you know that you're a sinner. So like I was lucky enough as well to go back to school. That was the only condition my dad had, that I was to finish my leaving cert. And like
Hmm.
I'm so grateful for that. But like even when it came to end of year and we had the Debs, like the guy that I asked my Debs, who I didn't fancy by the way. Sorry, Frank, in case you're watching. And
Katie's watching.
lovely guy, and we'd still be friends now. But he said to me, so back then, you know, you went home and asked your parents. It's not like now where you go home and tell your parents you need a grand because you're going to a ball.
Hmm.
So when he came back the next day, like Coleman's College was next door to Loretto Convent, and we'd kind of cross paths at lunchtime. And he said, "I'm allowed to go to the Debs with you, but I can't go out with you."
Oh,
And yeah, so yeah, but I would have heard that a lot. Like people weren't allowed to be my friend because I had a baby, or
what?
like, oh yeah,
Oh my goodness. I'm
yeah,
from another realm. Like,
yeah. So it wasn't like, you know, oh yeah, she had a baby, she kept it. Isn't that wonderful? No, it was she had a baby, she kept it. Like, let's see how we can continue to just remind her.
where does
But
it say in the Bible that if any of this stuff, there's nowhere in the Bible that says if you're a young woman and you have a baby that it gets
yeah,
taken off you and this is the.
you know, the actually it's interesting you say that, because you know when repeal the eighth
Mm.
was being discussed, and before the vote came in and both sides were going at it hammer and tongs, the local priest here, now I wasn't in the church because I don't attend those services, but he on the altar said, because some people had got up and walked out, you know, that people had no right to vote for that, and you know that people should not be voting for abortion. And he also said that after all, Mary was a single mother, and imagine what would happen if she'd aborted her baby, but she kept her baby. I'm not joking you. If for some
Mm.
strange reason of coincidences I had been in that church, I would have marched right up that aisle and I would have gone on that podium and I would have said, well, that's a big change.
Mm.
Nobody told me in 1982 that I was a great girl following in Mary's
Yeah,
footsteps,
yeah.
you
Oh,
know? Yeah, yeah. So that's what society was like. So there was this, it was that people pleasing or that seeking validation or knowing that underlining judgment,
mm.
some way kind of seeped into psyche. So, I did too much at work. I gave too much at work. I was
Yeah.
really unable to say no,
Mm.
until it became too much. And I didn't even know it became too much. I was still juggling. And
Mm.
it was like I hit a wall. And
Yeah,
I
rock
often,
bottom. During that period of your life, Shirley, did you seek out um, complementary therapies to get yourself well again and to come back to a kind of a state of balance and to receive some healing, you know?
yeah. Well, interestingly enough, so I was always drawn to like reflexology.
Mm,
I've had acupuncture, so I was always drawn to complementary therapies before that. For the 6 months, Janie, I did nothing. I did
yeah.
nothing. I did 6 sessions of psychotherapy, based on the doctor's recommendation. And he did keep trying to pull it back to my daughter,
Mm,
but I wasn't ready. I kept thinking, like, I mean, I used to go in there and I'd say, look, just give me some tips, tools, and techniques. It feels like my head is broken. I know what needs to happen to get it back together. I was still like somebody walking into the boardroom, like, just give me the solution and give it to me now. I'm busy. I have a life to get on with.
yes, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it was
Yeah.
those 6 months, I was almost immobilized. Those six
Mm,
months were just that holding space for me to realize all I wanted to do was go back to the corporate world. My doctor didn't want me to go back. I
mm,
was still determined to go back to prove that I was normal. And it was when I went back, it was like those cracks that had happened. It was a
mm,
bit like me and my foot in the door with my daughter. The light just wouldn't stop shining through.
mm.
And I just had that pull. And I remember sitting at the desk and I was think, this isn't normal. This is bullshit. Like, this is just bullshit. And I'm done with pleasing people. And
Yeah,
frankly, like, I don't give a shite if they think. So, like, I started practicing saying, and I wouldn't always say the word no. So sometimes I'd say, "Oh, yeah, leave it down there. I'm a bit busy, but I'll get to it. I wouldn't have a notion of doing it. Not
yeah.
a notion. But that's how I said my no's sometimes. So then I did 12 weeks of counseling with this amazing man. And I was introduced to him by somebody else. And he came from Galway and
Mm,
I came from Cork and we met in Limerick. And to this day, I don't know if he was a reformed alcoholic, if he was a counselor, or if he was a life coach. We never discussed his skill set or his education or anything else. The guy that introduced me to him, I trusted deeply.
mm.
And when I met this man, it was like a game changer. And he was an older man. And the reason, and I don't mean it disrespectfully, but he looked to me like somebody that had lived a reasonably rugged life and
Mm.
had probably come to his wisdom the hard way as well.
I
Like
just
he,
get that sense, the storyteller, the Shanachie, that's what it feels like, that he was like
yeah,
there, not even to tell you what to do, but just to share his experience of life with you in a way that was soft and
yes, yes. And he started unlocking stuff.
mm,
And
oh, love that.
yeah, yeah. Without ever, when I think of that psychotherapy, like I was paying €100 a session for that, and it was all textbook stuff, like no connection.
Mm-hmm,
Whereas this guy, I sit there and I was thinking in my own mind, sometimes I'd say he was a good man for the old pints back in the day. And he might have been, but even like
yeah,
that, he looked like he could belt into song or something.
yeah.
But yeah, so it was around that time then that I started pursuing. So what happened was when I went back, and again, my dad being the military man and being a different generation said, you expect too much fulfillment from work. Work pays the bills. If you want to be fulfilled, get a hobby. And I thought,
Mm,
maybe he's right. And then I started training
mm,
in the um, complementary therapies just so that I would have that balance of joy versus misery. Little did I know the universe was lining me up. I had no grand plan.
mm.
That was not on my radar. And I started doing these, and it was like a magnetic pull.
Wow.
Yeah, once I trained or started in the energy healing, it took away all of my fear. every single ounce of fear. And I literally walked into work one day in May, typed up my resignation. I still had no plan. I just knew. I knew if I created the space and if I trusted my instinct in the universe and if I followed my heart, I would be fine.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, Shirley, that is beautiful. That is amazing. So it was the reflexology that was the first thing that drew you in, was it, or
I
another
actually did the
modality?
life coaching, which was interesting because that's again more like the corporate world, the analyzing the answers, the processes for it. So
Mm,
I did that and it did give me some clarity, but it didn't really light me up from the sense that, this is what I want to be doing.
mm.
So the reflexology, it was really the bioenergy was the defining one for me.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Because when we were training, um, and just practicing on each other, my root chakra used to like really cold. It was like you had a freezer up by my
Mm,
backside.
mm,
And the
mm.
girl that was working on me was complaining that she was perished. And I remember the instructor saying, and she was German,
She
you
was
know,
perished.
yeah, yeah. And she said, that's fear. So the first month I thought, okay. And then the second month I was thinking, this is baloney, such bullshit. Sure. What am I afraid of? Like still in complete denial. I
Mm,
have a good job, I have a lovely home, and I was with a guy at the time that I loved. But like the fear, it was the residual fear from
mm,
my teens. It was all of
mm,
that
mm,
stuff.
mm.
And
Yeah,
it was, yeah,
absolutely. God,
yeah,
if you daren't even open your legs,
yeah, yeah,
like, God,
yeah,
yeah, all hell
yeah.
is going to break loose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so once I did that and I just allowed then whatever would kind of unfold to unfold. And it's funny because it's come full cycle now. Now I call myself the holistic coach because of course, and you know this from your treatments, we're not just touching people with our hands or we're not
Mm,
just touching them energetically.
mm, yeah,
We're talking to everybody that we meet.
yeah.
And there's a little bit of coaching in every session, or a
Mm,
little bit of
mm,
guidance, or a little bit of a nudge in the direction,
mm, mm. Absolutely, yeah. Even just telling someone you see them, I hear you, you know, you're so welcome. I'm so happy you're here today. How can I
Yeah,
help you? You know, it's so
yeah, it's
simple.
huge.
We live such complex existences, don't we, sometimes? And those really simple, easy acknowledgements are often just not there for a lot of people in their
Yeah,
lives. And yeah, um, just allowing someone to come into your space and just really drop into themselves and be present. And when you
yeah,
ask somebody how they are, you really mean it.
yes, yes, and without judgment. So
Hmm.
they can be as vulnerable as they are. Like sometimes that's the happiest I am if somebody comes, and they're like, my
Yeah,
work is
yeah. Or
my
just have
work
a
is
big
done before
rant,
I start. Yeah, I'm like, let it out.
let it
Let it.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, what's your favorite modality, Shirley, out of all of those gifts that
Um,
you have there?
so if I was going to get it, I would have to say probably reflexology because I
Mhm.
love the touch. I
Yeah.
love to be touched, and I think the power of touch is huge.
Mm.
From a results point of view, and the quickest impact that I see when I'm doing it, bioenergy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is so powerful,
Yeah.
so powerful. And I love that. And I love the people that come in and say, because a lot of people only come for that when they're desperate. So they'll
Mm.
say, I don't really believe in it now. And I'm just saying,
I love that one. Ah, that's all right. Just lie down. You'll be grand. Oh
I'm
my
like that.
God, what did you do to me?
I'm like, that's okay. I'm thinking you don't believe in the antibiotics either when you get them. You just take them. So like, just take the medicine
That's
I'm giving
true.
you.
That's true. I've
And
never had, I mean, I've never had any training in bioenergy because I've always, when I was 10, I watched The Karate Kid and saw Mr. Miyagi do Reiki on Daniel LaRusso, and that was it. I was sold. I wanted to become a Reiki practitioner. Um,
yeah.
and I went on to do Japanese in school because I was like, I'm going to Japan to chase my
Wow.
dreams. I still haven't been. but one day. But anyway, how would you describe the difference between Reiki and
I don't know what the differences are, but I'll
yeah.
tell you what it's based on, and then you'll be able to work it out. So it's
Mm,
literally based on the seven chakras, and it's the
mm,
electromagnetic energy field that's
mm,
inside us and around us.
mm,
So with the bioenergy, you're just really opening up those energy points and then clearing and balancing.
mm,
But it's not, there's no, we'll say, calling in of any additional resources doing it. Um, it's just certain hand movements where you're
mm,
clearing the energy.
mm.
Obviously, you have the intention for the person's higher good and for healing, but it's a very, it's just a physical process where you're just clearing. And in bioenergy, we start at the root chakra and work our way up to the head.
Ah, okay. Yeah. It's really similar to Reiki then. And,
Yeah,
really, Reiki is the Japanese word for energy healing because every culture, in some respect, has a connection with energy healing, and there's a word in every culture for it. Prana, chi, ki.
absolutely. Yeah, and
So,
we only have one energy source, and I often think it's a little like massage. So do you do Swedish or do you do Lomi Lomi? It's still massage. You're still
mm,
moving the
mm.
muscles and taking the tension out. So yeah, I'd imagine they're pretty similar.
Great. And how do people find you? Do you work just in your practice, or do you have online treatments? Or tell us a little bit about how people can contact you, Shirley.
Yeah, so I work from home in Kilworth, but I do have, so there's face to face and there's online. I
Mm,
have a website, so
mm,
that's www.shirleykeagan.ie, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook.
mm,
And the ones for online are the coaching, obviously, and then the energy healing. And I
mm,
mean, you've probably done distance Reiki as well
mm. Oh
on
yes,
people.
yeah, yeah. It's kind of I love
Like
I love the distance healing.
yeah, it's so powerful. So I
Yeah.
do have quite a few people around the country that I do the distance healing on
Mm.
regularly, and I've done it for a few people in Australia.
Oh,
Yeah,
fantastic. Oh,
yeah,
great. Yeah,
yeah. So that
brilliant.
is
Brilliant.
lovely.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
wonderful to know. Well, I am aware of the time, and I know you've a client coming in any moment now, I think. So just so wonderful to hear your story. And thank you for sharing such a personal journey with us, Shirley. I'm really I'll, take that away with me today and just hold the energy of you and your daughter and that in my heart. And it's just really nice to connect with you and anybody out there that wants to catch up with Shirley or book an appointment or find out more. I'll post all her details below and just have the most incredible day. And thank you so much for your time and your energy and all the work that you're doing to help people in this world, Shirley. Thank you so, so much. Take care.
Janie, thank you too.
Much
It was
love.
an absolute honor, and I could only let that out in a space that felt as safe as this. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you so much. Have a lovely weekend,
You
everyone.
too.
Bye now. And